This is the Pan-African show you've all been waiting for on Arts TV. We have a lovely guest today, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you for having me, Gazuye.
Now, if you could tell our audience who you are.
My name is Meti Shoaye Yilma. Shoaye is my mother's name, Yilma is my father's name. Because I always want both of them to be recognized in all the goods that I do, I decided to put my mother's name as a middle name. So for the last, I would say 20 years, unofficially and on all the platforms that I get the opportunity to talk about myself, I include my mother's name. But officially, my name is Metasabia. That's my passport name, but I only remember it when I fill some forms.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Meti, as a prominent journalist, you have over 20 years experience. How did you begin your career as a journalist?
I started developing an interest for journalism when I was in high school. If I'm not mistaken, in 93 or 94, there was a show on ETV that was entitled Afreeqa Journal. And when I watched Afreeqa Journal for the first time, and I remember it was even the first episode, I was stunned because the Africa that I saw on that particular show was very positive, diverse, beautiful, rich in history, in natural wealth, in everything. But before that, the Africa that all the media, particularly the Western media, had shown us was dark, was infested with disease, war, all the negatives. So that moment gave me a realization how powerful media can be. At that point, I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I was going to be on TV. So when I was 19, there was an announcement on ETV. That was the only media we had, the only TV. And the announcement was for continuity announcer post. I decided to go, give it a shot. There were, I would say, 700, 800 people.
Wow.
Yeah, and when I looked, everyone, they were all older. They looked very composed. I just came from college, a chubby girl, very young and very
vibrant
and not ETV-like.
Right.
So I knew at that point, you know what, I'll just go as far as I go, but it will be a very good experience. So little did I know that I was making it to the next level, and then finally I made it to the last training. So they trained 7 of us, and the one who got trained faster will be on TV first. I happen to be that person. So at 19, I started my career at ETV. And from then, my journalism, my reporting, and then eventually TV and radio producing works have followed.
Beautiful. So you're telling me out of 700 applicants, there were 7 that were chosen?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
I know. And that time, actually, they decided to take all young people, unlike all the other times. And I have a feeling that there was this department head particularly for the English programs, Futsum. I admire that woman. She was actually my first mentor. So Futsum decided to take young people, and that brought fresh look, exactly, fresh blood in ETV. And everybody was stunned the first time they looked at me on TV. I always looked younger than my age, and imagine at 19, I probably looked 15. So they can see there is something different. And even the way I approach the screen, I was just so young, so naive. I had no experience. So when I make mistakes, I laugh in front of TV because I was short, still am, and the seat is always, like higher. So I used to swing. So the whole look was different.
Not ETV.
It was not ETV at all. So that's why I admired Fitsum for the courage that she took, all of us young bloods. And it was fun. It was a fun ride for a little over 2 years.
Brilliant. That was nice. What are the areas you have worked in over those 20 years? What was your very first experience, which you just said was your TV?
Yes. So TV as a continuity announcer was the first one, and I realized what journalism and reporting means, because as I told you, all I wanted to be was on TV because I wanted to show something good. Then I realized there are so many areas that I can work on. So after ETV, while I was working at ETV as a freelancer, I did other jobs. I was a salesperson in the book world in Sheraton. I was actually a teacher for kindergarten. I had students who turned out to be as loud and as energetic and as very fast as I am, and everyone in the compound used to know my students. They're like, oh, that must be Meti's kid. And yes, they are, because they just turned out to be like me.
Which is a good thing.
I believe so.
Which is a good
and
thing.
After that, I decided to go back to do writing. So there was a newspaper called Time Out Addis. I started writing articles that focused on culture, society, current affairs, arts, and that got me into the art space in Ethiopia. So I got to meet with journalists, with artists, singers, musicians, and that opened up my eyes to so many things that were going on, not only in Ethiopia, but around the world. And after that, I joined the NGO world as a communications person. I did a lot of PR, communications, media relation works, then added events, organizing events and moderating panels, then facilitating workshops, emceeing different kinds of corporate and social events. After that, I went back to media because for a while I stayed away. But when I came back to media, I came back on radio. And I immediately fall in love with radio, even more than TV. On radio, that's the longest I worked when it comes to media. I think I did over 7 years. I started with Addis Zema, and then with Saifu, we went to Shaggar. We opened up Tadias Addis. And after Tadias Addis, I also started with another friend of mine, Fish, Hawari travel show on Fana, then on Afro FM, an English show in and around with Meti. And after radio is when I came back to TV with a travel show on LTV, Let's Go with Meti and Hidka Metiga. And then another show on Fana, which is a game show, Meidashi, which you play on your mobile app while you're watching it live. That was actually, Meidashi is the first live interactive game show in Ethiopia.
Is it still on?
We just started the 3rd season. I'm not the host, but whenever I'm in Ethiopia, I promise them to come as a guest co-host.
Beautiful. Wow, you've done a lot.
I
mean, 20 years is no joke.
It's not.
But then when you're telling me your experience, even from starting from 19 to even get into 20, I think you've covered quite a lot of different areas. You've touched different areas, which is so beautiful, because under 20 to get such an experience is amazing, because that will take you further when you
Yes. And I think having so much energy that's enough for 10 people helps.
Absolutely. Especially when you're younger.
Yes.
So is all your experience local, or do you have any international experience?
I have an international experience. So when I was around 23, 24, I got an opportunity to go to the US. I went just to visit my friends, but the restless me, I actually asked a friend, you know what, while I'm still here, why not just do some work? I started volunteering. I started working in a doctor's office as a receptionist, and experiencing what working and living in the US looks like. There was a community TV in the DC area, the Ethiopian community TV. I started volunteering there as well. I did some interviews, produced TV shows, and then I realized I did not want to be in the US. I did not want to be anywhere else but Ethiopia. I wanted to visit because I'm a travel enthusiast, but for living and for working, I wanted to be in Ethiopia, rooted here, because I wanted to be in media, right? I wanted to be a TV radio producer. At that time, in 2004, in the US, the diversity for media, the inclusivity was not as it is today. And I did the numbers because I went there with a tourist visa. If I stayed there, that means I have to ask for asylum. Yeah. And for asylum, I have to fabricate a story. And that story would have to be bad-mouthing my country, because I have, I have to tell them I'm pushed in one way or the other.
Exactly.
I couldn't have the heart to do that. And I did the numbers. If I stay here, that means I have to go back to school. That means I have to do 3-4 years. That means to join the workforce and then to come to media, to be in the mainstream. It will take me like a minimum 6-7 years. And not to be able to come back to Ethiopia for 6-7 years, that's not possible. So after 5 months and 20 days, just 10 days before my entry visa expires, I ran back home. And I've been here ever since. But then in 2016, I went to Seychelles for a 3 months work to be a reporter for a newspaper. And then that's another experience that I have. But then last year, of course, I started coming back and forth for the new venture that I started.
Were you always comfortable as a public speaker? Could you give aspiring beginning journalists or even students public speaking tricks of the trade? That includes me, by the way.
No. I might doubt that, but for the rest, okay, not for you. It's so interesting that for me, being in front of people, being in front of cameras, having a mic in front of me, having an audience feels home. I'm always comfortable sharing whatever I know. I'm always comfortable asking questions and asking follow-up questions, asking why. Being inquisitive is a very major part of my being. There's actually a picture at home where there are students, like babies, 4-year-olds, and we are on stage, and the teacher held the mic for me, and I was like, I don't know whether I was singing or talking, but I was the lead. And that was like a Parents' Day in my KG. And I think since then, I was always comfortable. So for me, it's not something that I learned. It's just something I developed, I practiced, and I became better and better. But it never felt awkward for me to be in front of people.
It's always natural for
It's
you.
always natural. And I actually feed off of the energy of my audience. I enjoy that. I re-energize from the presence of people. But for me, what worked is, there are a few things that really worked for me. One, I make sure that I know my subject, what I'm talking about when I become in front of people to speak, because even if it's an audience of one, you decide to give me your time, a resource that you will never recover. So I have to be respectful of that. So I get prepared. I make sure that I talk about what I know. And I'm okay to say I don't know, if I don't know. So that also, that kind of honesty helps. And the other thing is to always assume that everyone in that audience is there because they support me, or they like me, or they want to hear what I say. It's something positive. So knowing that people are there somehow to uplift me gives me that energy to be comfortable in front of people. So I think this is what helped so far.
Beautiful. Is emceeing like public speaking, or is it more like singing? American rappers call emceeing the highest form of rapping.
Singing, because every time I try to sing, even I find my voice, my singing voice, very awkward. So I don't know. I never actually associated it with emceeing with singing. But for me, what emceeing gives me is allowing people enjoy the moment. So when I MC, I try to understand the demographics and psychographics of my audience. I see what might interest them, and based on the event, the theme, the topic, or the client, I craft something around that. So because I love reading, I love learning new things, I always find something interesting around that area. I start with stories, for example. I love stories. I love listening to them. I love telling them. So starting with stories, actually, especially when it's very formal, then it breaks the ice. Exactly. It makes everyone feel at ease. So I use stories a lot. I don't rhyme. I don't use rhyming verses, but actually that's something interesting.
You know, when I mean singing, it's not as such singing, but even rapping we call singing, right?
True,
it's the way
true.
It's the way you tell the story.
That's very true.
And
yes.
Because of who you are, the way you're going to be narrating whatever it is that the subject is, you'll be narrating it in your own form.
That's very true, yes.
So that, in its way, it could become one of the highest forms of rapping.
Good.
That's what I meant.
Then I'll add that in my resume
exactly.
now.
Yeah. Could you describe the main skills required for panel moderation? It seems so far from journalism. Because journalism, even though your journalism is usually not, even if it's in also writing, you're also actually speaking because you're also on the radio and you've also been on the TV.
Actually, the fact that I have been a journalist helped me a lot in my work of moderating panels. Because as a journalist, you're required to know more about the subject. You have to research. You have to read, ask people. That sense of inquisitiveness really works, both as a journalist and as a moderator, because I bring those elements into my work of moderating panels. Really helped, and also connecting with my panelists. As much as I can, I try to meet with them ahead of time. So I understand them. I understand the way they talk, their styles, their topics, to create that rapport at the beginning. So moderating panel discussions is, I would say, if not a branch of journalism, at least a sibling or a very close cousin, first cousin of journalism.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Is workshop facilitation more educational?
very much so, because when I facilitate workshops, one, it takes longer time because I have to understand what my clients want to achieve at the end of that workshop. So I craft not only the topics, but also what the activities we should include in between. So the activities, the breakout sessions, the energizers, they have to align with the topic, with the objective of that workshop. So we have to craft those activities, those energizers. They might feel like they're just plays, they're games, but they also add to the topic and to the objective of that workshop. And also because when I moderate panels and facilitate workshops, I work with different sectors, different industries. I have to get at least the basics of that sector, that industry. Like I moderated, for example, a panel for energy conference. So I have to learn about green energy, about off-grid, so many things. When I facilitate strategic workshops for UN agencies, I have to understand what that agency stands for, what they want to achieve by the end of that fiscal year, because that strategic workshop could be for that particular year or for a particular project. When I work with government offices, I have to understand the policies and the directions of the government or that particular government office. So there are so many things that I have to understand, I have to learn about before I even start outlining the workshop or the panel. So it's very educational.
You mentioned leadership as one of your strong suits. Can one train for leadership, or is it a natural talent?
I believe it goes both ways. Some people exhibit some leadership traits early on, so it's easier to nurture them. But we all have something that we're very passionate about, something that we're very good at. And once we have those passion and skills, I think it's easier to also add the skills of leadership into that. When you put people in places where they're good at and where they're comfortable in, then it's easier for them to bring other people along with them. So I think it goes both ways. You can be trained, it can be nurtured, and it's also a born behavior. Talent, right? I think, yeah.
So do you think leadership works better if one is a team player, or is it better to do it from a higher place to get respect?
Well, there are different types of leaderships, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it goes both ways, but for me what worked so far is being a team player. When I have been a solo rider for a while, for a long time actually, because most of the projects that I do are client based. So they give me a project, I work on them and I deliver back. But also when we organize events, when we do production, TV, radio productions, we work with a team. So in that aspect also, playing within a team really helped. But you cannot be a leader when you're alone.
Exactly.
Even if you're up there, you still have to work with people, even though the hierarchy puts you on top of everyone. So being a team player is very, very critical, and also very important for you as a leader, because you're not complete. We're not complete as human beings. We all have that flow, we all have that gap, and we have to bring those people who are very good at what we're lacking, and that for us to actually look better, do better, achieve better, we need to be team players, and we always need to bring people who have something we don't have.
We can never say we have it all.
Oh, no.
We don't.
That's probably the biggest lie that we ever heard.
Can one train to be a better planner and organizer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely. And that actually I learned a lot because I did a lot of live broadcasting. So unless I plan it properly, unless I am on time, I'm very organized, I have everything planned out ahead of time, I cannot fill that airtime. I cannot deliver what's expected of me because, as I told you earlier, I'm very, very respectful of my own time. So I feel the same way about the time of my audience. So doing live shows, both on radio and on TV, it really helped me to be organized. And I learned it. I really learned it because I also feel like I slip away when I don't do live. I feel like a bit reluctant or loose. Exactly. So doing shows live actually make me a very good planner. And that I practiced it every time.
I have to agree with that one. Is compassion a natural talent or is it a religious practice?
When we're born, compassion is our default. Look at kids. Children have that in them.
Absolutely.
But we grow out of compassion as we get older because of so many reasons, so many circumstances. And then when we regain our compassion, when we decide to regain it, then we learn it, we relearn it. But it's our default. Just like, few things in life. Being happy is our default, I believe.
True.
Compassion is our default. Creativity is our default.
So I guess at some point we grow out of these.
Yes.
Why do we grow out of it? Because compassion, when you really think about it, it's something that should not be separated from any human. I mean, we have to be compassionate to live.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's very hard.
That's true. I think when we start competition, our games, when we grow up, the games we play are mostly about winning, about competition, about, being ahead, but at what expense? How about we all get ahead together? How about we collaborate? So there are areas where we need to compete and where we need to collaborate. I understand, but I think the collaboration part should overweigh the competitiveness. The moment I notice even myself competing, then there is that little demon that starts awakening.
Right.
But when I think as a whole, when I collaborate, when I try to bring people to work together, then I feel like, I need to be kind, I need to be compassionate so that we all go together and we all get ahead, we all can win.
Right.
I think it's those things that bring us out of compassion, or that, just like creativity. When we get educated in schools, because it's very structured, it's a certain way, then you have to shade away your creativity as you get into education year after year. So we grow out of creativity, but then we all have, every little child has some kind of creativity within them. They're artists of one form or another. Even the kid that's very handy, the kid that dismantles things and put them back together. Yeah. Those kids are creative. But then when we tell them, you cannot dismantle this, then they hold back. That means they, we're shattering their creativity. But then we can relearn creativity. And I think those things are something that we have to decide to regain them, to relearn them. Just like trust. Children trust. But once
that's broken.
It's broken, then they don't trust anymore. But if they decide they can trust, even though they know they can be betrayed.
Right.
And that's what we are right now. As adults, we trust because we choose to trust.
But some of us have distrusted, or we've had experiences that make us not trust anymore.
Exactly, exactly. It's like I loved, but my heart was broken, so I decide not to love again. But that's so sad.
Yeah.
No, I want to love, even though I know my heart, there is a high chance my heart will be broken, and it's okay, because even that pain will bring some aliveness in my life. And it also teaches me that maybe I should pick who I love, or maybe I should learn how to get hurt, how to get through, that broken heart. Like I have to know how to put back the pieces of my heart. So I think as I grow older, I decide on some things like trust, like love, like compassion, to relearn them and to hold on to them.
We need every experience in our life to learn about us. Every broken heart shows you about you. It's not even about the other person. True. We should always look within ourselves. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? It always has to be because of us, because we have no control about the other side. So it teaches us more about oneself, I believe. So I'm going to go back, take you to Seychelles. You had listed an experience of Seychelles. So I would like to know how it came about to actually get that job, and also how it was as an experience, how it made you grow, how it made you feel being in a completely different country and an island at that.
Yes.
How were you even able to work?